Hello Year 7s and welcome to our next topic. This particular topic is percentages, but it's going to be closely related to what we've just done with fractions. It's going to be very important for you to complete all your maths-based tasks because I'm going to assess your understanding of this topic based on reviewing your maths-based tasks that you complete. So this table's just got a couple of, it's got a few fractions and percentages and how they actually are linked together. The first one there is 1 over 2, which we know it's a half, and a half is the same as 50%. Okay, so you've got a 1 in 2 chance, you've got a 50% chance. I've got a quarter, it's probably one of the other ones that we're familiar with. So 1 part out of 4 is 25%, a quarter. 1 part out of 5 is 20%. And 3/4 is probably another common one for us. 3 parts out of 4, we know that as 3/4. We also know that as 75%. So these are just a couple of fractions and their equivalents demonstrated or presented as a percentage. You don't need to copy this. This is just a bit of a, to put us into the picture of what the topic is. So we should be familiar with this particular symbol. As we know, that symbol here is our percentage symbol, which means percent, and this means out of 100. I think the word percent per 100, we think about the cricket and we talk about centuries and various batsmen making centuries. It means they've made 100 runs. So when we think about this word percent, or when we see percent, we should link it with out of 100. So 75% means 75 out of 100. We can write a percentage as a fraction by putting the number over a denominator of 100. So I'll just show you what that looks like. For example, 25% can be written as a fraction as 25 over 100. But if you recall from our last topic of fractions, we know that when we work with fractions, we should always simplify our fractions into their most simplest form. Now, 25 over 100, can I simplify that fraction? Yes, I can. And my highest common factor for both 25 and 100 is 25. So if I divide my numerator by 25 and divide my denominator by 25, I end up with 1 over 4 or a quarter. So 25% expressed as a fraction or shown as a fraction in its most simplest form would be 1 over 4 or a quarter. Just to let you know that with this topic, you are allowed to use your calculators. So it's something that you can have nearby and use it, because you're probably going to have to use it because we're dealing with fractions with generally larger numbers. You can pause and copy this into your workbook. Okay, moving on. This is really important because we're now going to look at converting percentages into fractions. Just like we talked about on the previous slide, we're now going to do some examples. How do we do it? Just as a quick reminder, we write percentage as a fraction over 100, and then we've got to simplify. And the question says here, express percentages as fractions or mixed numbers in their simplest form. So we remember that we can always simplify fractions. If need be, we can convert it to a mixed number. This first question here, I've got 48%. So how do we convert 48% into a fraction? Well, the first thing we do, based on what we've got in the circle above, is I convert 48 into a fraction over 100. The next thing I need to do is look at my fraction and say, can I simplify it? Now, these are both even, so we could divide it by 2, but I think we need to go and find what is the highest common factor. What's highest common factor for both of these? I know that my 4 times tables, 12 times 4 is 48. So if I divide by 4, whatever I do to my numerator, I must do to my denominator. So I've got 48 divided by 4, that'll give me 12. And I've got 100 divided by 4, that'll give me 25. So 48% as a fraction in its most simplest form is 12 over 25. I'm going to move straight across now to example B. So what do I want to do here? I want to express 75% as a fraction. So I want to show 75% as a fraction. First thing we do is we can write 75 over 100, as we've got in that circle above, in the oval. And then I ask myself again, is this in its most simplest form? Well, the highest common factor for 75 and 100, and this is where your calculator is going to help you a little bit. I divide by 25. I must do the same to my denominator, what I do to my numerator. So my answer here is going to be 75 divided by 25. Well, how many 25s do I have in 75? 3. And then 100 divided by 25 is 4. So 75% expressed as a fraction in its most simplest form is 3 over 4. Let's move across now to this example. So 2%, I need to express 2% as a fraction. So we know straight away, first thing I need to do, write my percent as a fraction over 100. And then I look at my fraction and say, can I simplify this? Well, these are both even. And I know that if I divide by 2, and I divide by 2, 2 divided by 2 is 1, 100 divided by 2 is 50. So 2% expressed as a fraction in its most simplest form would be 1 over 50, or 1/50th. Now this one here is probably a bit of a challenge for us, because we'll look at it and say, well, it's 120%. How am I going to show that? Well, it would be an improper fraction. 120 over 100. We always have to make it over 100. And then we ask ourselves, how can I simplify this fraction further? And again, what's my highest common factor? Because there's lots of common factors between 120 and 100, but the highest common factor is going to be 20. So 120 divided by 20 is going to give me 6. And 100 divided by 20 is going to give me 5. Now I should really be placing it underneath here, but I've run out of space. I'm just going to move a little bit to the side. Final answer should be converted to a mixed number, because that's what it asked me in the question originally. How many 5s in 6? Well, there's 1. We've got a remainder of 1 over 5. So 120% expressed as a fraction in its simplest form would be 1 and 1/5. You can pause and copy these into your workbooks, please, because you're going to be doing similar questions. Okay, so our next question here. We've converted percentages to fractions. Now we're going to convert fractions to percentages. So we're going the other way. Now, we can convert fractions to percentages by creating an equivalent fraction over 100. There's actually 2 ways to do this. And really, this first one here is probably the easiest when we can do it. And the second one is to convert any fraction to a percentage. We multiply by 100. So there's 2 ways to convert fractions to percentages. These are the 2 ways. For example, I've got 3/5, and I'm going to follow this top purple way of converting fractions to percentages. Now, in this case here, we know that percentage is per 100. So if I can create an equivalent fraction that's over 100, I'm going to have my percent really easily calculated. So the first thing I've done is written my fraction as a denominator of 100, because I know that that's what I need to do. And then I look and say, what do I multiply 5 by in order to make it 100? And I just need to think a little bit about my times tables. These are getting a little bit larger. I know that if I multiply 5 by 20, it'll give me 100. Now, equivalent fraction, whatever I do to the denominator, I must also do to the numerator. So I'm going to multiply 3 by 20 as well, and that's going to give me 60. So I've converted 3 over 5 to 60 over 100. And what am I trying to do? The whole purpose of doing this is to convert my fraction to a percentage. Well, 60 out of 100 or 60 parts out of 100 gives me 60%. That's pretty easy, okay? Now, we can only create equivalent fractions when 100 is a factor of my denominator that's given using this first process, okay? That's something to keep in mind. In this case, 100 is a factor of 5, so I can actually, is a multiple of 5, so I can actually go ahead and do that. If it's not a multiple of 5, then I can't do it, okay? Now in my next one, I'm going to convert any fraction to a percentage. So let's have a look at this one. So in this case, I've got 3/8. Now I know that 100 isn't a multiple of 8, okay? So the next thing is I'm going to follow this process. I'm going to multiply by 100. So I want to convert 3/8 into a percentage. I'm going to multiply by 100. Now this looks the same as what we did in our previous topic. And if we remember, the rules say that if I'm multiplying by a whole number, I need to convert that 100 into a fraction. And that's easy to do. We can convert any whole number into a fraction by putting it over 1. So now we're just going to go back now, and we're really going back on what we did with fractions here. We need to think about, can I cancel out vertically or diagonally? And I know that I can cancel out diagonally because I can divide the 8 by 4, and I can also divide the 100 by 4. And then I've got 3 over 2 times 25 over 1. So why would I actually be cancelling out? Because once I cancel out, I actually get nice numbers that are a little bit smaller and easy to work with. Okay, so 3 times 25 is going to give me 75, and 2 times 1 is going to give me 2. Now, I haven't quite finished yet because we're trying to convert this into a percentage. And 75 divided by 2 is 37.5, or think about 75 over 2 as an improper fraction. I'll go through and convert that in the same way. So 37.5% is what 3/8 as a fraction is, 37.5%. Now I want you to pause and copy this example. Now ideally I would have actually done my working out underneath, but I didn't have enough space, so I've done it in a straight line. So please pause and copy these into your books. Okay, I'm going to move on. So fractions to percentages, really important. Again, this is just some more examples, same as what we've done, but we're just going to do a couple of examples. So convert percentage through equivalent fractions. That's one way we can do it, which I showed you before. Or I can convert a percentage by multiplying by 100. So we can change fractions into percentages by using either of these two methods. Question A is really easy because we know that it's 7 over 100. This is the easiest type of fraction to convert into a percentage because that's 7 out of 100. So straight away, my answer is 7%. Really easy. This one here is a little bit more involved. Not too hard, but I've got 13 over 25. So I want to change this, or I want to actually convert this into a percentage. Now, I know that 100 is a multiple of 25. So I can actually change this 25 into 100 quite easily. So I'm just going to put 100 down here. If I couldn't change that easily into 100, I wouldn't use this method here. Okay. So what do I do to 25 to make it into 100? Well, we multiply by 4, which means that if I've multiplied my denominator by 4, I must also multiply my numerator by 4. Now, 13 times 4 is 52. Again, we can use our calculators for this. Yeah, we're allowed to use our calculators for this topic. So here we go. I've actually now got 52 parts out of 100. And we know that anything over 100 is quite easy to convert into a percentage. It ends up becoming 52%. Okay, that's quite easy for us. Let's move across to this one. Now, in this case here, I've got 7 over 40. Can I create an equivalent fraction of over 100? And I think it's going to be a little bit too hard this time. So what I'm going to use is I'm going to use this method up here. This is the method we're going to use this time. Okay, it says to convert percentages by multiplying by 100. So let's do that. So I'm going to start a little bit higher. I've got 7 over 40 multiplied by 100. Again, we're going to multiply it as a fraction, so I'm going to put it as 100 over 1. Okay. The next thing I would do is, can I simplify? Now I know diagonally I can simplify because I can divide by 20. So if I divide by 20, and I can also divide by 20, what I end up with is 7 times 100 divided by 20, oops, so that's 5, over 40 divided by 20, 2 times 1. This is the same as what we were just doing in our previous topic. And our final answer, I'm going to run out of space down there, so I'm just going to do it here. 7 5s are 35 over 2. And then we have a look at this again, and I need to change it because we want it as a percentage. How many 2's do I have in 35? Well, I'm going to have 17. Remainder 1 over 2%. So this is just converting an improper into. Okay, so our last example is 2 5/8, and I want to convert this to a percentage. The first thing I'm going to do is change this to an improper fraction. 2 times 8 is 16, plus 5 is 21. So I'm going to have 21 over 8. And we need to multiply this by 100, and we can convert that to a fraction. Can I cancel out diagonally? Yes, I can. I can divide by 4, and I can divide by 4. So what I'm actually left with here is I've got 21 multiplied by 100 divided by 4 is 25. And all of that is going to be over 8 divided by 4 is 2 multiplied by 1. Now I'm going to use my calculator for this. 21 times 25 is 525. Sorry about that. Over 2. And we can convert 525, and we can use our calculator again to do this. We end up with 262.5%. This is a tricky question, but again, you can use your calculator to help you. So that's our last example. You have got a maths-based task now to practice these skills. Please pause and copy this into your workbooks first, and then you can attempt the maths-based task. Thank you.